Whit Weeks is set to make his return. We're talking about it. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts. Of course, on YouTube as well, so please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. And thank you for helping make the Locked on Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app. Create an account. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Frank Wilson met with reporters Thursday night, his last media availability before LSU's final home game of the season, final home game of 2025, before the Valley shall sleep for another 9 months or so. And Frank Wilson had fantastic news about a Tiger favorite.
Whit is probable. He's had a good week of practice, ushering in and out and popping around. I thought he showed tremendous progress, and he's talking and feeling the right way. And what capacity and how much, I'm not sure. But right now I would say he's probable.
So Whit Weeks, probable to play Saturday night against Western Kentucky. And man, I would love to see that for so many reasons. Part of it is obviously Whit is arguably LSU's best defensive player when he's healthy. Now, look, Mansour Delane will have something to say about that. Harold Perkins is a super talented player who, at his best, is disruptive and such an enforcer. Whit Weeks was second in the SEC in tackles a season ago. And sometimes the further removed you get from that, it can be sort of out of sight, out of mind. And unfortunately for Whit, he's only played in 6 games this season. And that actually comes with an asterisk because against Florida, he only played 3 plays when he was ejected for targeting. So, he played in that Clemson game and then played against Louisiana Tech, only played, again, 3 snaps against Florida. Played a half against Southeastern because LSU was blowing him out, so he sat the second half. Then he played in that Ole Miss game on the road and had 10 tackles and was awesome in that game, but got rolled up on at the end, and that's where he re-injured that ankle, had the open date, came back against South Carolina, and a heck of an effort, man. 8 tackles, half a TFL, half a sack in that ball game, and LSU's 20-10 win. But that's whenever he realized something was wrong, and hasn't played since that game against South Carolina back on October the 11th. So you're talking about, more than a month that Whit Weeks has missed. And, I'm not going to be preachy in the same way that I was with my feelings on Garrett Nussmeier. Well, actually, maybe I will be. There has been a pretty strong notion from a contingent of LSU fans alleging Whit Weeks has quit, he's opting out, quit on his team, gave up, whatever. If Whit Weeks runs out there and plays on Saturday, which I suspect he will, if Frank Wilson's saying he's probable, every person who levied that charge against Whit Weeks owes him an apology. Because sometimes nonsense like that is so unfounded needs not be said. If you're an everydayer of this show, and thank you for being there, and shout it if you are. And if you're new, I welcome you and thanks for being here. You will recall that the Friday before the Vanderbilt game, remember how that went. They played South Carolina, then they played Vanderbilt. And in that game against Vanderbilt on that Friday, Whit Weeks was questionable. And I said that Friday on my radio show, led the show, the first 30 seconds of the show, telling you Whit's not going to play in that game. And told you that the optimistic point of view was that he'd be back against Alabama, that he would miss the Vanderbilt game. He would, you look through the the A&M game, the open date, and then hopefully have him back for Alabama. And that was optimistic. Clearly, I knew at the time what LSU still hasn't disclosed, which is the extent of his injury. You see, some of you believe that it's just a twisted ankle and that's why he's been sitting out. It ain't a twisted ankle. Clearly, you don't miss a month and a half for a twisted ankle. Tyree Adams had a badly sprained ankle. He had the tightrope procedure. They disclosed that. Nobody's ever disclosed the extent of Whit Weeks' injury, and I've said it over and over and over again here. They haven't disclosed the extent of his injury until they say it on the record. I've asked people within LSU football to disclose his injury on the record. They haven't been able to do it or haven't been willing to do it, and that's their prerogative. They're HIPAA rules, and Whit can decide what he wants to do. But ultimately, intellectually, that dude has not been out there, not because of a sprained ankle. It's more serious what he's been dealing with. And God bless. In a season like this, where they're 6-4 right now, playing a G5 opponent in Tiger Stadium, and Whit's going to come back from injury to play in that game, it's because he wants to play with his team. And he's a gamer and wants to be out there, and I respect it tremendously. And I hope he is out there and he's able to play. And something else worth watching is I really sincerely hope that on senior night, when his brother West Weeks will be honored on senior night, that West, Whit, and Zach all get on the field at the same time. Mentioned it earlier in the week. Zach's only played in 2 games, so he could get out there for a snap, and they could make history together. West, Whit, and Zach could all be on the field at the same time. And if, in fact, they are, that'd be the first in LSU history that 3 brothers were on the field at the same time. And I would love to see that happen. So fingers crossed, here's hoping that Whit continues to respond well and is able to get out there and play against Western Kentucky in the final game at home of this season. Now, the other thing that sort of caught a lot of headlines is that Whit Weeks' girlfriend, Landry Kiffin, was in Baton Rouge on Friday. Every Friday for a home game, the Bengal Bells, which is an LSU female booster club, has a luncheon the Friday before every home game. And there are always players that show up for that luncheon, and they're interviewed on stage. And Whit Weeks was one of the players that was interviewed. So Landry Kiffin was at the Bengal Bells luncheon on Friday. Sort of they're supporting Whit Weeks. Don't make anything more of it than what it is. She was just there to support Whit. But one of the things that I'm very hopeful for is that this isn't the end of Whit Weeks' time in Baton Rouge. He'll make a decision that's best for him and his family, but would certainly love to see him get healthy, come back and play his senior year in Baton Rouge, have a healthy rev share NIL deal to make it worth his while, play great, stay healthy, and get an opportunity to play a full season, boost that draft stock, and have a fantastic senior season. We'll see if that opportunity does, in fact, present itself for Whit Weeks. But the opportunity at hand Saturday is for Weeks to be back out on the field with his brother West Weeks, and hopefully Zach Weeks as well, against Western Kentucky. Now, the news is not so good for Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah, he will not participate. Garrett is a no-go. He will be out for the game.
Unfortunately, senior night for Garrett Nussmeier out. It will be interesting to see if he chooses to dress, just to put the uniform on one more time, to run through the tunnel at Tiger Stadium on senior night to be honored. No doubt there will be a raucous ovation. It's not going to end the way that any of us wanted it to, the least of which is Garrett Nussmeier. But it'll be interesting to see if he dresses for the final time in Tiger Stadium or if he's there in street clothes, but he will not play, as you heard Frank say. And a lot of people have asked me this week, could they do a ceremonial, kneel down? I don't even know that that's something Garrett would be interested in doing. But you heard Frank say it there that Garrett Nussmeier won't play Saturday in the game against Western Kentucky. But the question was also posed is, will he play again? So he won't play against Western Kentucky. Well, a week from Saturday, you have Oklahoma, and then you still have a bowl game ahead as well. Here's what Frank Wilson said.
I think there's a want to for him, but I also think there's a consciousness of care and not to tear up scar tissues or make a matter worse than what it needs to be. There's certainly a want. He wants to play. He's just not able to at the moment.
I'd love to see it, even if slightly, because the reality is you're not playing for anything of significance. And when your playing days are done, they're done. You don't get another shot. It's not like use the offseason, get healthy, and come back next year. It's over. He'll never get another shot. And so if he has a chance to get out there even for a play, I'd welcome it. So here's hoping for Garrett Nussmeier. Won't be this weekend, but maybe against Oklahoma or in the bowl game. We'll see, and we'll certainly be talking about it right here on Locked on LSU. But Saturday, the issue at hand is Western Kentucky. And I did have a chance to catch up with Tyson Helton, the head coach of the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Couple of interesting tidbits you'll hear next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. The app makes it super simple. You can even see the exact view from your seat before buying. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. So LSU welcomes in Western Kentucky Saturday night in Tiger Stadium. The last time LSU and Western Kentucky played was back in 2015, and that was a game that the LSU Tigers won. You might remember Brandon Doty was the quarterback of Western Kentucky that year, the big 6'6" quarterback, and he was the guy that slung it all around the yard. That night in Tiger Stadium, Brandon Doty threw 61 passes on the day. He threw for 325, but that's just the way that they managed. Brandon Harris in the game for LSU threw for 286. He had a career high 286, 3 touchdown passes. Three of his touchdown passes went for more than 50 yards. It was a big play day for LSU against the Hilltoppers. Hard to believe it's been a decade since LSU and Western Kentucky played that game in Baton Rouge. But that night in Tiger Stadium, Tyson Helton was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. And I asked him when I had a chance to speak with him on Thursday, what he remembered about that night in Tiger Stadium.
I remember it was a monsoon in pregame. There was probably 2 inches of water on that field, and which slowed both teams down. I was actually glad that happened. Like always, LSU is a very talented football team. So I was like, okay, we might slow these guys down a little bit.
No such luck. LSU scored 48 in that football game. It was 48-20. For whatever it's worth, the halftime score that day was just 14-7. But LSU put up a 20-point third quarter, added 14 more in the fourth quarter, and pulled away. But it was at least close there in the first half with a 14-7 halftime score. Well, fast forward 10 years later, and Tyson Helton is now in his 7th season as the head coach of the Hilltoppers, and he has had a heck of a run there. They've made a bowl every year he has been there. They were in the Conference USA Championship a year ago where they lost to Jacksonville State. And next week, Western Kentucky, which is 8-2 on the season, is going to play Jacksonville State on the road for, depending on what happens this weekend with Jacksonville State in conference, for what would be the best record in Conference USA here in the regular season, and an opportunity to go to the Conference USA Championship game again 2 weeks from Saturday. Well, we talked a little bit deeper about his team, but one other really interesting storyline for Saturday with LSU and Western Kentucky, is Jimmy Lindsey. Now, remember, Jimmy Lindsey was hired from South Carolina to be LSU's defensive line coach on Brian Kelly's staff back in 2023. Well, on the first day of fall camp, Jimmy Lindsey had a very serious medical scare, and he didn't coach for LSU at all that season. As a matter of fact, after the season, of course, he was replaced as the defensive line coach for the Tigers and spent a year at North Carolina, and now is back as the full-time defensive line coach with Western Kentucky. So I asked Tyson Helton his thoughts on Jimmy Lindsey making a return trip to Baton Rouge.
Yeah, this is the second time that Jimmy's been with me. When I first took the job here, Jimmy was with me from the start. He is the best of the best, in my opinion, as a defensive line coach. When you talk to coaching is a fraternity, and if the name Jimmy Lindsey is extremely high up there. Obviously, he was at LSU, and when you talk to Jimmy Lindsey, and I can't thank LSU enough because I have a very close relationship with Jimmy. He said how LSU handled his medical situation and just the administration and the coaching staff and the head coach. And it was first class. And so this will mean a lot to Jimmy to be able to come back and to see everybody. And I know he's very appreciative of what LSU did for him during that time. And I'm also appreciative of that as well, because that was first class of during that time that he was going through. But he's definitely one of the greats. And so I'm just excited to have him back on the staff with.
I don't know that anybody has ever given a really detailed explanation of what happened with Jimmy Lindsey. And I don't know that Jimmy has spoken about it in great detail either. And I think some of that is intentional because he wants to coach. And I think there was a real concern about his physical ability to do that. But, Jimmy Lindsey was stricken around the same time that Greg Brooks was. And I know Jimmy Lindsey. His year in Baton Rouge, we connected and we've stayed in touch since. There was a time, his year on staff at North Carolina in Chapel Hill, that he visited Baton Rouge and we connected, and he and his wife and I had dinner. And he's an amazing guy. And I'm telling you, Jimmy Lindsey is a walking miracle. I don't know that he would mind me saying, but what he went through was very similar to what Greg Brooks Jr. went through. Very similar ailments. And the fact that he is coaching football again and living not only in you're coaching football, living a normal life is stunning. And he is a true living, walking miracle and an amazing guy and a great defensive line coach. I mean, there was a reason LSU plucked him away from South Carolina. I mean, all those great defensive lines that they had at South Carolina, it was Jimmy Lindsey recruiting and developing those guys. And that was the expectation at LSU. And remember that 2023 defense is the one that nosedived when Jimmy Lindsey was stricken. And then, they had to move a lot of guys. John Jancic had to move down to coach defensive line. And it was just a kind of a hodgepodge of a staff. They moved Bob Diaco from an analyst on field. And then had to bring Coach Pete Jenkins out of retirement to work with the defensive line. That was all after Jimmy got sick. Man, and I am so happy for him to be back coaching, leading a position group, and an opportunity Saturday to coach on the field in Tiger Stadium. Although it'll be on the opposing sideline, I'm happy for him personally, just obviously as a human, to be healthy and out there coaching, and as his friend as well. So it'll be great to see Jimmy Lindsey in Tiger Stadium as well. Some really cool, some really cool storylines interwoven into this ball game. But there will be a ball game played as well, and this is a really good Western Kentucky team, y'all. This Western Kentucky team is 8-2 on the season. They did lose early in the year at Toledo. They lost at home to FIU, but other than that, they're 8-2 on the season. They're 6-1 in conference play, and they did make a quarterback change. And so over the last month, Rodney Tisdale Jr. has been their starter. Most recent outing against Middle Tennessee, threw for 371 and 3 touchdowns. So Tigers defense is going to have their hands full with a very potent Western Kentucky offense. And I asked Coach Helton what the blueprint was for his team to come into Tiger Stadium and pull the upset.
Like anything, when you play such a really good opponent like LSU, the number one thing is get to the last 5 minutes of the game. Be in it in the last 5 minutes of the game, because that's where it's won. Everything in between there's going to be ups and downs. The obvious is the turnovers are critical. Explosive plays are critical. Field goals don't get it done. You're going to have to find the end zone. We've had good red zone defense this year, so we got to keep LSU out of the end zone. But like anything, we're gonna have to play our best football for sure. But it's about winning, and we intend on coming in there and trying to win that football game. And so I think it's going to be a really good game, and have tremendous respect for LSU, and we'll roll the football out there and see what happens.
I do want to give you a thought on the game itself, how it may play out, and my final prediction. We'll do that to wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. Excuse me, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. I think everyone's going to look at this game with LSU and Western Kentucky and wonder, hold on, LSU's a 21.5 point favorite. Can LSU even score 21 in this football game? Let's not get it twisted. This is an LSU offense that has struggled all season long. The Tigers on the year averaging just 23.8 points per game. And of course, mixed in there is the 56 points they scored against Southeastern Louisiana. You look at their other non-conference games, like their game against Louisiana Tech, they won 23-7. And now their game against Western Kentucky, we'll see. The Clemson game, of course, the Tigers won 17-10. So it just hasn't been easy for this Tiger offense to get going at any point. Even last week against the worst defense in the SEC and one of the worst defenses in college football, LSU managed just 23 points against Arkansas. And that was on a day where Arkansas turned the ball over 3 times. And they got stuffed on a goal line stand, and you still only managed 23 points in that football game and won by 1 point. So I'm not sure that regardless of if it's Garrett Nussmeier, Michael Van Buren, or me playing quarterback for LSU, it's just hard to imagine this offense getting going and scoring. Now, the Western Kentucky team that they're going to be playing on Saturday defensively is not an elite defensive team, but not a bad defensive team either. So their points against are 23. So LSU's averaging 23 points a game, and Western Kentucky's giving up 23.1 points per game. When you look at their most egregious outing of the season was when they played at Toledo in week 3, and they gave up 45 points against Toledo. On that day, Toledo ran for 307 yards. That is certainly going to be a ticket for LSU. You are bigger, you are more physical, you're more talented. You should be able to line up, commit to running the football, and run the football against Western Kentucky. Now, the other game that they lost was a home game against FIU, where they lost 25-6. Now, that was also when Maverick McAvoy was still the quarterback. So we've seen now over the last 3 games, Rodney Tisdale take over at quarterback for Western Kentucky, and he brings a little bit of a different dimension. They're going to spread you out. They're going to throw it a bunch. McAvoy, 12 touchdowns, 5 picks in his games played. Tisdale, 9 touchdowns, just 3 picks in roughly half the snaps. He's thrown for over 1,000 yards as well. And Tisdale does bring a little bit of a running threat to the offense. He's their 4th leading rusher, 34 rushes for 123 yards. Keep in mind that is not sack adjusted, whereas McAvoy was not really any kind of a running threat for this team. He had 31 carries for 28 yards. So that's obviously including sack yardage. So you do have a little bit more of a threat with Tisdale, but he's not a great running threat at quarterback. So for LSU, you kind of look at it and say, okay, if stylistically you're playing a similar offense to what you just saw with Arkansas, a quarterback who's athletic and capable of running, but it's not really his forte, and on the flip side, they want to spread you out and throw it. Well, that plays into LSU's hands because LSU's strength defensively is their secondary. Now, can the Western Kentucky offensive line hold up against the LSU defensive front and Blake Baker and the exotic schemes and blitzes? That remains to be seen. And the answer probably is not. You have super talented guys defensively for LSU, from Harold Perkins, Jack Pyburn, Patrick Payton. These guys are just going to be more gifted on the line of scrimmage than their counterparts from Western Kentucky. So it should be a day where LSU defensively has a day against a team that is certainly capable of spreading you out, slinging it around the yard, and scoring, as Western Kentucky does average 31.5 points per game. That's tied for 46th in America. It's just hard for me to imagine Western Kentucky having that type of offensive day against LSU. So I don't expect the LSU offense to really get going. It's just been that kind of a struggle all season long. But I also don't expect Western Kentucky to go score up 30 against LSU. I think this is probably a game where, I know it's hard to imagine me saying it out loud, but I do think LSU will clear the 25-point barrier against an FBS opponent. I'll pick LSU to win 30-17 against Western Kentucky Saturday in Tiger Stadium. So they do clear that barrier. I don't think LSU covers the 21.5. Again, as we say, by this point of the season, you are what you are. And LSU 10 games in offensively is not a very good offensive football team. I'll be fascinated also to see what they do at offensive tackle. We've talked about it earlier in the week. They had a little bit of a shuffle there where Kern started at left tackle and Ori Williams started at right. At halftime, Williams went to left, and we saw Weston Davis going at right. So do they continue that rotation to get a lot of these guys reps on the offensive line? Just a couple things to watch the game within the game Saturday in Tiger Stadium with LSU and the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. Okay, that's going to do it for us here. Thanks again so much for making this your first listen, and thanks for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in the world. If you're on YouTube, please smash the like button. If you're on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And thank you as well for checking us out every single weekday on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. And let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked On LSU. It's your team every day.